Welcome to FFS PRO Site Builder. This tutorial will walk you through the system and teach you how easy it is to create a complete petroleum equipment bill of materials and quote using all of the latest products from Franklin Fueling Systems. Let's get started. The first thing you'll want to do is either create an account, or if you're a new user, or go ahead and log in. When we log in, the first thing we're going to see is an archive of all of the projects that we've previously worked on. Site Builder will store all of your projects and quotes so that you can access them anytime from any web browser, including your mobile device. Let's go ahead and look at some of my previous projects. I can come down here and simply by clicking the name of the project, I can check out one that I've already worked on. This is a project that I've already completed. It includes a full bill of materials that lists all of the products and pricing, as well as quantities needed to build this site in particular. I can also look at any projects that I currently have in progress. This one in particular is midway through with being completed, and I can jump directly to where I left off. Site Builder will save progress automatically as you work through the quote so that you can come back anytime and begin right where you left off. Let's go ahead and start a new quote. The first thing I can do is enter a project name. Remember, your archive is searchable by project name, so try to be specific when putting in the project name. As this is a global tool, I have the ability to select between either English or metric units of measurement, and I also can choose between US dollar or euro in terms of currency. I also have an area where I can put in the address of the particular site that I'm working on. I can use the project's notes section to put any information that I want to appear on the final quote. For instance, I might put that this is a 2-product, 3-dispenser site, and it's set to open on May 30th, 2016. Now I'm going to go ahead and start my quote. The first thing I see is a Select a Section page. I can drive through each of the individual sections of the site and use the guided tour to walk through each step of building a site. Or I could use the manual quote option to jump right to the end and begin to build a quote using part numbers. We'll talk about that a little later. The first section I'm going to begin with is piping and containment. To begin, I'm going to select the market standard under which my site will be built. The options I have are either UL standard or EN standards. Since I'm located inside the United States, I'm going to leave it as UL. By choosing UL, all of the connections I will use in this site will be NPT. My next page allows me to pick the different pipework systems that I need to build for my site. I could do product pipework, remote fill, vent, and stage 1 or stage 2 vapor recovery pipework. For this example, I'm just going to build an APT double wall product pipework system. Next, I'm going to choose the diameter of pipework I want to use. For this system, I'm going to use 1 3/4. You can see here that this is a pressure system. If I had selected the EN standard on one of the previous screens, I would have the option to build a suction system. Now I'm going to identify the different product lines that exist in my station. I'm going to pretend that the site that I'm working on has 2 different product lines. One is going to be regular gasoline, and product line number 2 is going to be diesel. Make sure that you name these something specific because these will be used to identify these product lines later in the process. Next, I'm going to determine the dispenser configurations for my regular product line pipework. Since this is a 3-dispenser system, I know that I'm going to have 2 inline tees and one end of run or 90 degree. Next, I'm going to enter in the distances of pipework that I need. First, I'm going to determine what the distance is from the tank to my dispenser number 1 on my regular pipework system. Then I'm going to determine what the distance is between my first dispenser and my second dispenser. Lastly, I'm going to enter in the distance between dispenser number 2 and dispenser number 3. Now I'm going to determine the dispenser configurations for my diesel product line pipework. For my diesel line, I'm only going to run it to 2 of my dispensers. So I'm going to have 1T and 190. Next, I'm going to determine the distance from tank 1 to dispenser 1 on my diesel line. Then, since I'm only going to 2 dispensers, I'll put in the distance between dispenser 1 and dispenser 2. In this next step, we're going to determine what type of test boot I would like to use. Either split or rubber. I'm going to leave it as split. Next, we'll decide what type of shear valve riser we're going to use. We have the option of either using a flexible connector or a rigid pipe that's been locally sourced. I'm going to keep it as flexible connector. Now I'm going to determine the flexible connector end fitting configuration that I want to use. I'm going to use a male swivel by Easy Male on this particular site. Then I'm going to enter in my flexible connector overall length. The system has determined and recommended that I need a total of 5 flexible connectors. It also gives me a preview of the part number that is built using the specifications that I selected. Our next step is to determine what our product shear valve specifications are. I'm going to leave it as double poppet, and then I have the selection of either female, male, or union. I'm going to leave it as female. The system has determined that I need a total of 5 shear valves. And these shear valves will be NPT threaded double poppet with a female adapter. Next, I'm going to select what diameter my electrical conduit is. I'm going to keep it as 3/4 inch. Now I have to enter the quantity of conduit entry seals on my site. Since I'm going to have 2 tank sumps, I'm going to select 2 for each for a total of 4 3/4 inch conduit entry seals. In order for the system to determine which dispenser sump it's going to use, we have to enter in the dispenser brand and manufacturer. Next, we're going to decide which dispenser sump burial type we'd like. I'm going to leave it as medium burial. Based on those 3 pieces of information, the system will automatically determine which dispenser sump would be accurate for this installation. My next step is to enter in the number of dispenser sumps at my site. As we mentioned before, I'm going to have 3 dispenser sumps. The system will automatically identify the number of stabilizer bar kits that are needed for my particular dispenser and configuration. Our next screen gives us a summary of the dispenser sump hardware that's been selected automatically based on our information that we've entered. I'm going to get 3 sets of inline hardware and 2 sets of end-of-run hardware. The system automatically determined what equipment is necessary for these pieces and sets of hardware. Next, I'm going to determine what type of tank sumps we're going to be using. I have the option of choosing between fiberglass or polyethylene in terms of the sump material. I'm going to leave it as fiberglass. Next, we'll determine if we want a medium or deep burial tank sump. I'm going to leave it as medium burial. And then I'm going to select an octagon base with bottom. Next, we'll decide how many tank sumps we need. Since we have 2 product lines and 2 tanks, I'm going to enter 2 tank sumps for my quantity. The system automatically determines the number of entry boots and the type of entry boots that I need. I've now closed out the piping and containment section, and I'm ready to move on to my next section. Let's check out service station hardware. Our first step in this section is to determine what type of spill containment is necessary. Since I have 2 products with 2 tanks, I know I'm going to need a total of 4 spill containers. That's going to be 2 for vent and 2 for product drop. For my vent lines, I'm going to use single wall spill containers, so let's start out with those. My thread type is going to be NPT, and since this is a vent line, I'm going to use it without a drain. Before I mentioned that I want 2 of these for my vent, so I'm going to enter in 2 for the quantity. Next, I'm going to look and see that it's asking me if I want to add another spill containment configuration. My answer is yes, because I still have to figure out and configure what my product drop spill containment is going to be. As you can see, we've looped back to the first screen. I've already done my single wall, so now I want to do my double wall for my product drop spill containers. Next, I'll choose what type of thread I want. I'm going to leave it as NPT, and since product is going to be going into this spill container, I would like it with a drain. Next, I'll determine the monitoring. I can choose between mechanical or electronic. I'll choose electronic, meaning this spill container will come with a ULS, or Universal Liquid Sensor. Now that I've configured those spill containers, I know that I need 2 of them. And this time, I am ready to move on, so I will leave it as no, I am finished. Next, we're going to determine how many fill, adapters, and caps we need. I know that I have 2 product fill spill containers, so I'm going to put a quantity of 2. Next, I'm going to determine the amount of vapor recovery adapter and caps I needed. I know that I have 2 vent spill containers, so I'm going to put this quantity at 2. Next, we're going to look at overfill prevention. I have the option of selecting between either a dual point or coaxial configuration. I'm going to leave it as dual point. Next, we select what compatibility our overfill prevention valves need to have. Since we're using gasoline and diesel, I'm going to mark it as standard. Then we'll determine the top drop tube length, either 60 inches or 120 inches. And then we'll select the bottom tube length, either 96 inches or 120 inches. I'm going to leave it at 60 inches for top, 96 inches for bottom. I know that I have 2 products and 2 tanks, so I'm going to enter the quantity of overfill prevention valves as 2. I do have the option to make another configuration. If I want to make another overfill prevention valve configuration, I would select yes, but since I have what I need, I'm going to move on. Next, we're going to talk about extractor vent valves. First, we're going to select what thread type. I'm going to leave it as NPT. Then we're going to look at the extractor vent valve sizing. For my first outlet thread size, I have the option of either 2 inches or 3 inches. I'm going to leave the first one as 2. My second outlet, I have either the options of 2 inch, 3 inches, or none. I'm going to leave it as none, meaning that I will have only one 2-inch outlet on this extractor vent valve. I know that I have 2 tanks, so I'm going to set my quantity at 2, and again, I have the option to either create another configuration or move ahead. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Next, we're going to look at manways and manholes. Again, I'm building within the United States, so I'm going to select the UL standard. First, we're going to look at monitoring wells. I have the option of either a 2-inch, 4-inch, or 6-inch. I'm going to go with the 4-inch one for this site. I have 2 tanks, so I'm going to put in quantity of 2, so I can have 2 monitoring wells, one for each tank. Next, we're going to decide what we want the cover material for our manways and manholes to be. To start off, I'm going to select a few composite ones for on top of my tanks. Since these are larger and going to go over my tank sumps, I'm going to make them 42 inches. I know that I have 2 tanks and 2 tank sumps, so I'm going to enter the quantity at 2 for this. Now I have the option to either move along or add a few more. I'm going to add a few more. I'm going to add in a few smaller steel ones for my probes. I'll select steel as the material. And then I'll select 18 inches for a smaller one. I know I'm going to have 2 probes, so I'm going to go ahead and set the quantity at 2, and then I'll move on. And that completes my service station hardware section. The next section we can move on to is submersible pumping systems. The first thing we'll enter in is the number of fueling positions. Since I know that I'm going to have 3 dispensers that'll be double-sided, I'm going to have a total of 6 fueling positions. Since I'm building inside the United States, I know that my market utility frequency is 60 Hz, so I'll leave that selected and move on. Next, I'm going to select the fuel compatibility for my submersible pumps. Since I'm using gasoline and diesel, I'm going to go ahead and leave this at up to 10% ethanol or 5% biodiesel. Next, I'll select the protection level for my submersible turbine pump. As you can see, I have only one option, the standard option. If I were to back up and select the other fuel compatibility type, I'm given the option of either a standard or advanced protection submersible turbine pump. Since I'm using regular gas and diesel at this site, I'm going to go back, reselect my fuel compatibility, and move forward with a standard submersible turbine pump. The system is now figuring out exactly which submersible turbine pump is perfect for the amount of fuel positions I've selected. The system has determined that I need a 1.5 horse fixed speed submersible turbine pump. I'm going to go ahead and enter the quantity of 1 because this is for my regular line only, which is going to all 6 of my fueling positions. Now I have the option of moving forward or adding another. I do need to add another because remember, I'm only taking my diesel line to one of the dispensers. So I'll select yes, add another, and we'll loop back around. My diesel line is only going to one dispenser, so I have 2 fueling positions that I'm going to be using for that product line. Again, we're in the 60 Hz market utility frequency. This is going to be a up to 10% ethanol or up to 5% biodiesel system. Standard protection. The system has determined that a 3/4 horsepower fixed speed submersible turbine pump would be good for my diesel line. I'm going to put 1 in for quantity, and now I'm finished. And that rounds out the submersible pumping system section. My only section I have left to do is the fuel management systems. The first products we're going to look at in the fuel management system section is the probes. I have the option of selecting either an inventory and leak detection or inventory only. Also, I can select NPT or BSPT for riser thread. And then lastly, I'm going to put in my tank diameter. I'm going to build 2 different probes for this, one for my regular and one for my diesel line. Let's start off with an inventory and leak detection probe, and let's say my first tank is a 10-foot tank for my regular line. Since I know that I have 1 tank that I need to build this probe for, I'm going to move the quantity to 1, and I'm going to indicate that yes, I do need to create another probe configuration for my diesel line. I'm going to keep inventory and leak detection as the probe type. I'm going to go down and move this to 9 foot, indicating I have a smaller tank for this diesel line. I'm going to enter in a quantity of 1, and now I can move on to the next section. Now we will select our floats. For my gasoline line, I'm going to leave the gasoline option selected and hit next. Now I have the option of choosing between a 4-inch or 2-inch diameter float. I'll leave it at 4 inches. Now I'll need to specify the quantity of these floats. My 4-inch gasoline NPT. I want 1 of this for my regular line, and I will need to build another float configuration for my diesel line. I'll select my fuel type as diesel and hit next. I'm going to keep this at 4-inch, and I'll indicate that I need 1 of these for my single diesel tank. And now I can continue on. The next step is to determine whether or not my site will require sensors. If it does, and I select yes, I'll be taken down the path of building a TS550 EVO fuel management system. If my site does not require sensors, I could select no and go down the path of a Calibri automatic tank gauge, which does not support sensors. For this particular site, I will require sensors, so I'm going to leave yes selected and build a TS550 EVO fuel management system with sensors. To determine which interstitial tank sensors I need, I will first have to select the tank material. I'll select fiberglass, and then I'm going to indicate whether or not I want discriminating or non-discriminating sensors for my tank interstitial space. For this particular site, I do want discriminating sensors. I know that I have 2 tanks, so I'll enter in a quantity of 2, 1 for my gas tank and 1 for my diesel tank. Our next step is to indicate what type and how many sensors we require for our under dispenser containment, or our dispenser sumps. I know that I have 3 dispenser sumps in this configuration, and I want discriminating, so I will enter a quantity of 3. So I have 1 for each of my dispenser sumps. Next, we will enter in the quantities and types of sensors for our tank chambers. I know that I have 2 tank chambers, 1 for each of my tanks, and I want discriminating, so I will enter a quantity of 2. My next step is to indicate what type of internal hardware options my fuel management system will require. I'm going to select none for internal hardware options, and since I don't require a modem on this particular tank gauge, I will leave that selected as no. The next step will be to determine what internal software options I require at my site. I'll select Yes for SCALD, or 24-hour tank testing. I do require reconciliation and auto calibration at this site. I will select Yes. Also, I do want line leak detection at this site, so I will select Yes. In the previous screen, I indicated that I did require electronic line leak detection, so I'll need to enter in the number of lines that are being monitored. Since I have two products, I'm going to select two lines, one for gas and one for diesel. The system will now take that information that I entered in and figure out the exact modules needed for my TS550 EVO fuel management system. The system then gives me a summary of my fuel management system console requirements. I can see that it's given me a TS550 EVO with various software and hardware options, plus my line leak detection transducer kit is set at 2 lines. My site is now complete and I can go ahead and check out the final quote. Now I can take a look at my full quote. As you can see, all of the general information, including the project's notes that we entered at the beginning, appear on this page. I can also get a look at each individual product line and all of the parts that have been selected based on the criteria that I've entered. It's split up by product line, so I can go in and investigate each individual product line before I finalize my quote. I also have the option of adjusting the multiplier. I can change this by entering in a custom multiplier for each individual product, or I can enter a full multiplier at the top, which will be applied to every product in the product line. I also have a units advised column. If I should for some reason require some additional products on this order, I can change the units requested at any time manually. If there's a product in here that I don't necessarily want to order, I have the ability anytime to delete that item from the order. I can also manually add in any custom additions. All I have to do is enter 3 digits from a part number or even a product description, and I'll be presented with several options to add. I can go in and adjust these multipliers manually, and I can also change the units requested. Our next step is to finalize and lock the complete quote. What this will do is lock in the pricing and the quantities so that they cannot be changed. Now that the quote is locked, I can take a few different views of it. I can look at list prices only, I can look at net prices only, and I can look at both list and net prices. Also from here, I can download a PDF version of this quote or export it to an Excel spreadsheet. Here's an example of what the final quote will look like. As you can see, my quote will always stay in my archive, will give me the date it's created on, and indicate the status.